whiteboard. The company we worked together at Irrational Games, there was always constantly this sort of funny and somewhat subversive graffiti all over the whiteboards, and it was still kind of burned into our brains, having recently shipped Infinite together. And so we talked about, okay, well, the game designers are often putting 2D sort of floor plan looking maps on whiteboards and discussing what might be done in a given level of a given area. And we thought, okay, well, what if the game was set on the whiteboard? And that's in a lot of ways why this hand-drawn aesthetic is the way it is. We started with that idea of what, a sketch come to life. But over time, it became clear that for once we could talk about games and talk about the behavior of the player from the inside, from the actual piece of software. And so that's when we started talking about vaporware. It's sort of right before Kane came on, we were sort of committed to this idea that you were delving into previous versions of one piece of software, and the poor programming staff had been forced to keep it compatible and keep it demo ready every single time. So any given version of that game could still be restored to life, and you could kind of dig down into it, Underworld style, looking for ruins of previous ideas. And then Kane came on and sort of took over our kind of Don Quixote idea of you could rewrite a creature from the inside and mix and match the body parts. We had a kind of very rough idea of what that might look like from a programming point of view, but it was buggy as hell, and Kane sort of saved our bacon.
When I came on, I heard the story and I was like, oh my god, has this been done yet? No, how? And it was just mind-blowing when I first found out about it.
Cool. So here we have we found the mushroom wizard, but all right. So yes, there's a door.
Oh, you guys are just cut out again.
Oh wait, we're cutting out. Is it possible that we're cutting out? I'm going to continue acting as if we are being heard. So
yeah, no, we're good. You're good now.
All right. I hope these interruptions are only momentary. So yeah, another thing that struck me about this game. I'm gonna try and put this in a way that is not open to being used against me too much. But there's a lot of meditation here on player agency. Some of it on the part of there's two characters who are really representing like the ludologist versus narratologist side of games, right? Like there's the guy who just wants to tell his story and forces all combat to be cut from the game, for example. And there's his opposite number, and that to me, like some of that in-game commentary reminded me in an interesting way of the way that BioShock, the first BioShock game, sort of meditated on player agency from a narrative point of view, right? Like that notion that Andrew Ryan's, well, I won't. All right, I can do spoilers for BioShock, right?
I think you get two.
Where his final speech is all about the lack of free will that player characters have in video games. But really, that's only true from a narrative point of view, right? At least with our current techniques, right?
Yeah.
And so this game's approach to that whole question was kind of, to me, seemed like it was in an interesting kind of conversation with that game. I don't know if you guys thought about that in that way, but or if it was just something that came into this game through your blood.
Oh, a little of both, I would say. I mean, so yeah, you kind of nailed it for me. Like I having worked on, frankly, too many BioShocks, right? Like it was time for me to do something different.
There's probably a limit.
Yeah, talk about the way that the player interacts with the designer in a way that described kind of the other half of that, which is how much control the player ultimately has over the meaning of the thing. And so, but in a funny way, right? And so the notion being that the people who are officially in charge of this world are deeply incompetent, and so they kind of don't have your back this time. You're not going to have this big crescendo moment that we've manipulated you into. In a lot of ways, you kind of carve your way through all of their terrible decisions. and then in terms of what part of it was in the blood, and again, I am trying not to spoil our game, so I'm gonna dodge the kind of specific whatever BS thesis that I had in the back of my mind. Ultimately, it's a good example of the joke that it doesn't matter. Like, what the player kind of takes from it is all that there is. But anyway, when I first got to Ion Storm Austin, working on Thief 3, everybody spoke in this incredible sort of wizard jargon. And all of it used words like agency and the flew back and affordance, and it flew back and forth. And it sounded to me like the dialogue of space magicians. And that hearing them argue what they cared about, what it really did come down to was who's more important here, the player or the developer. And it was a lot of fun to create caricatures, exaggerated caricatures of those philosophical poles and kind of put them in the world and show how this world became paralyzed.
Yeah, there's an excellent article, interview with Harvey Smith in The Guardian that I read this morning. And he pointed out one of my favorite things about Dishonored in particular, in that you are an assassin that does not have to kill. And to me, that makes your choice to kill that much more meaningful, because you didn't have to do it. They give you the ability to do it, and the game supports it. But if you choose not to, then there's an outcome that makes sense.
Yes, like to me, and I recognize that this is because of just like my own preferences as a player. There's an opposing view that, where some people regard like the combat in Dishonored as the easy way to play. For me, it's just the opposite. As soon as the situation is out of my control, I feel like I've already failed, and that's my style as a player. So I very much played through that game trying to ghost the entire thing. Surprise, surprise, having been lead designer on Thief. So to me, like, Dishonored was the first game that was about not killing things, right? Like, not just a game where you don't kill things because that's not part of the game, right? But because because of those very things that you were just articulating, right? Like, it's able to be about the choice not to kill things.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Certainly the easy choice to kill things.
Yeah, the world is telling you legendary assassin, feared assassin. So you can externalize your inner conflict by saying, no, actually, I don't kill.
So, yeah, and I bringing this back around to your game, right? Like, there's a very overt theme here about sort of rejecting the interpretation of the game that the designers had in mind, right? Obviously, in Dishonored, like, both of those possible interpretations were very much in mind for them, right? But there's a gameplay mode also that you see kind of the antisocial version of that is in griefing, right? But but anyone can enjoy it in terms of finding exploits in a game, and to some extent, a lot of our discussions and a lot of our best discoveries on the Looking Glass immersive sims were around things that we kind of intuited that other developers might have tried to prevent, right? A player would come up with some strategy that we never anticipated, that would end run around some lovingly crafted piece of content of ours, right? It's like, but as far as we were concerned, right, like, they were enjoying the game at that point, and they paid their money for it, right? And so we were happy when those things happened.
Yeah, they had engaged so strongly with its structures that they found ways to make those edges their own kind of shortcut. Mm-hmm. We to bring some of this stuff back together. Like, I liken those play styles, those sort of very exotic kind of ghosting Dishonored kind of play styles as similar to sexual fetishes. Like, they're very very rewarding for a certain subset of the community, and
very personal.
Yes, and very personal, and the pride involved is well, at any rate. Some of those people in early access, these kind of system savants that found ways to break our game interestingly, we wanted to go so far from child-proofing this game that we actually immortalized some of their names in the game because of what they found and how they helped us sort of support those solutions that we never would have thought of in a million years.
Yes.
And that felt like the first time, at least for me anyway, where I worked on a game where the relationship with the player was kind of live and was a duet. And the best way that we could sort of acknowledge that was to say, okay, your name is in the game somewhere, you magnificent pervert.
I mean, and yeah, to go back also to the sort of Looking Glass and also Ion Storm stuff, in some ways the seed of this design can be seen in those stories of people, getting outside of the map by placing wall mines in Deus Ex and, climbing up. And I was sort of, we were like, what if that was the game? That it was really about finding those exploits and trying to get outside of it.
Yeah, it's that matches. It's really interesting. Like the whole theme of the game is about that too, right? Like there's this like metafictional thing going on at that point, right?
Yeah, there's certainly there's metafictional stuff.
Yeah.
Splashed all over this game.
You're playing a game about being a player of a game, trying to break the game by breaking the game.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like we at least for me as the guy who put most of the words in this thing, I've struggled with the desire to talk directly about the player and player behavior for a long time. And I felt like in a serious game. There is a point where it actually can tear you out. But if you know going in that the whole thing is a game-like construct that games and gaminess are welcome and part of the joke, I could finally kind of talk about the specific twists of the way that players are, especially en masse. And that has been refreshing. I think it's out of my system now, but it's been really cool to really to not be talking in an embarrassed way around the player, and the fact that the player is often like the lead actor of a little play who wanders on stage drunk and doesn't know any of the lines. To be able to talk about that with a whole heart in the open, and obviously, I think that. Whatever we do next will probably be earnest to a fault. It'll probably be just about some man who wants revenge for whoever murdered his feelings.
Who did this to me?
But it was refreshing. I think just to like color way outside the lines where the player lives.
Yeah. All right, how are we doing for that? We're about halfway through. Okay. I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation.
I'm 10 seconds in the past for the future, for the past, so it's hard for me to get in on the conversation.
Here, I'm gonna.
It was all funny in the past.
Oh, okay. The past is a funny place. I'm told.
Hey guys, Fuzzy Freaks just joined in.
Oh, hey, Fuzzy.
Really, she was streaming this morning, and it was a blast watching her. She did some really fun stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't see the chat at the moment. I should take a look over that way here.
Yeah, actually, it was funny. Earlier, while we were talking, I saw a tactic that I feel we should have supported, and I think I know why it didn't work. But so I'm going to want to update. And he was trying to use Mind Swap to get the Wizard's ability,
I saw it, yeah.
And that really should work. I think we have a collision layer issue there that we have to fix.
Yeah,
that's.
I tried throwing Mushroom the Unstoppable or whatever I called him into
exactly.
there. I don't know. I guess
it seems like that we like
Mushroom
that.
did not win.
Were they both allied to the player?
No,
Because allies don't attack other allies.
That's why it didn't work.
but even so, if he had done that, I still think it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, it's hard to say because there is some
there's a barrier.
There's a barrier, so you can't just trap him and make the puzzle boring. But
so there's a. That's actually a really good example of one of the sort of infinitely divisible design problems we've had on the Magic Circle, which is that, there is a key to that door in the game world and many ways to get it. But when somebody sees somebody through, the Mushroom Wizard standing through bars, they start thinking, okay, well, how are the many ways I could assault this directly? And because we've wanted you